Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and this is the space and the place where we talk about things important to your soul. As always, we ask you to subscribe, like us, leave comments if you like, and support us on Patreon. I just wanted to mention that we are in full speed ahead with our planning for the retreat to Bali. You can go on the website and see if there's enough there that excites you to join us on our spiritual adventure to Bali in June of 2026. So today's guest is pretty amazing, and I think that you will find his story to be amazing. His name is Kofi Douhadji. He's an accomplished author, consultant, public speaker, dedicated to empowering individuals and organizations in setting and achieving their goals. As the founder of Flying Wings, he also assists independent authors in transforming their compelling stories into published works that inspire action. His writing is characterized by its blend of personal experiences with universal themes of growth, resilience, and interconnectedness. His debut memoir, Unbroken Optimist, shares his journey from humble beginnings in Togo to becoming a celebrated American entrepreneur and thought leader. He further explores these themes in his subsequent books, Tiny Sparks and Roots and Fruits. And he tells me that he's working on a fourth book now, soon to be released. With the dynamic presence as a public speaker, Kofi delivers powerful messages on leadership, resilience, and the transformative power of storytelling. His unique perspective is shaped by his diverse background as a U.S. Air Force officer, serial entrepreneur, and executive coach, holding a master's degree from Bellevue University. He draws from these rich life lessons to inspire audiences to pursue their aspirations and take concrete steps toward their objectives. Beyond his professional endeavors, Kofi is committed to helping others discover and embrace their unique potential. Whether through his consulting work, his insightful books, or his engaging speeches, Kofi is passionate about unlocking the transformative power of a clear vision and strategic action. His philosophy is simple yet profound. Define your aspirations, cultivate your capabilities, and share your successes with the world. So, without further ado, Kofi, I'd like to turn the microphone over to you to tell your spiritual journey from childhood until now, and then we'll talk about your inspirational book that I have on display here on YouTube.
Thank you so much, Bob. I'm really honored to be here, very excited to spend some time with you and your audience. My spiritual journey started in a beautiful village called Afanya in West Africa, Togo. Togo is bordered by Ghana, Benin, Burkina Faso to the north, and the Atlantic Ocean in the southern side. And I grew up a few miles away from the borders of Ghana, and during that time, we had a Catholic church that was in the village, and that has the only school that we attended. So it was a blend of education, not just for the world as we know it, but we also benefited from being educated on spiritual matters through multiple priests and nuns that would visit our village coming from Italy. And I remember having a Bible is something that was part of the first things that we would get as soon as you start school. So, um, but then back then, I was just doing the things they would share with us because that's what we were told to do.
Yeah.
Um,
I,
but
I want to
over
interrupt just for a
time,
second. Were those classes
yes,
taught in Italian, or were they taught in French, or what
those
language?
classes was taught. They were taught in French.
In French. Okay.
Yes, yes, they were taught in French. So, but then when we go to mass on Sundays, most of the mass was in Latin,
Okay.
but the classes were taught in French. Yes. So as the years grow old and I started understanding and connecting the dots for myself and started to think for myself, I started making sense of what God actually is and how that connects to religion and how Catholicism differs from other religions and other way of interpreting how God is viewed by human beings. And I started wondering, what about my grandparents who didn't get to discover Christ through the message that we've gotten, you know? And I started reading from the Old Testament that, of course, God knows that people in time and space will have opportunity to connect and cross with information, but at different levels. And my grandparent didn't have the opportunity to learn about the Messiah and the message and the gospel that we were able to get through the church. And then I started asking myself, what would happen to them? Where would they go? And something always bothered me is how diverse, I don't think not the diversification per se, but how we view religion differently. And then one thing that would normally be a reason for us to come together is a reason for us to be apart, because I think, Jesus or nothing, and someone else thinks this Messiah or nothing. And then we get to this point where we can't get along because the way we interpret God is not the same. But fundamentally, we are all talking about the same thing: love your neighbors just like yourself, be useful to the world, you know, have the fear of God. So I started personally wondering, why is it that we cannot get along on the thing that matters the most?
Right.
And that led me to a journey where I would tell people nowadays that my only religion is love. If you ask me, are you a Catholic? Are you Muslim? I will tell you I'm love. My religion is love. And that's what I believe in. That's what I believe God is. He is love. And I don't think he would want us to start putting name on things and diverge from the main message, which is let's be together, let's share love, and let's make this journey on in the flesh a fun one.
Okay. So, just in terms of a journey, at what age were you making these kinds of decisions, and when did you finally settle on love is it?
I think settling on love has been around my first years in college,
Okay.
around that time. So
S-
it's been a long journey.
So that was Bellevue College?
Bellevue University, yes.
And where is that?
University is in Bellevue, Nebraska.
Okay.
So about 20, 15 minutes outside of Omaha.
Okay. I know that the next question is, how did you get to Nebraska? And that's the story of your book. So uh, I guess we might as well dig into this book uh, because basically the book is a memoir from your childhood until you ended up in the Air Force. So uh,
Correct.
maybe go ahead and tell that story, and then I'll get to some more questions.
Sounds great. Thank you for the opportunity, Bob. Um, so, as I said, I was born in a beautiful village, very small, so small that you knew not just your neighbors, but also their pets. And I was growing up there, I was just school, chores, studying, going to the farm and stuff like that until when I was around 12 years old, my parent got a divorce. And it was a very, very, one of the ugliest divorce I've ever experienced in my life. Um, and that wrecked everything as I knew growing up. Everything changed. No, the way my parents used to be together wasn't there anymore. My dad got a new wife. Things were different. My mother in law, I mean, my stepmother had children before um, marrying my dad, and she moved in with them, and things were very different from what I've known for my entire first 12 years of my life. But what made things even more challenging was that we lived in a scarcity um, situation. Even food was difficult to get by. It was very difficult to make the end meet. So um, I would spend time just wondering why. When I look around, we go to school. You have kids that are well dressed. They have new shoes, and you barely sometimes you are wearing flip flops on your best days. And I always wonder why things were like that. But then the very organization that brought the church to my village also built this big hospital, very well equipped in the middle of nowhere, and has one of the most beautiful libraries I've ever seen. So I would go after my mom left. That library became like a sanctuary for me, my peaceful place. And I would go there, and then I started reading. And around 12 years old, the same year my mom left, I read this documentary on JFK, and I would beg anyone who can read English back then to read these things and explain them to me. And the nuns, they were so kind; they would, stop and take time to assist me with requests like that. And I discovered JFK, President JFK, through this documentary, and fell in love with the man, what he stood for, his vision for the US when he ran for office, when he led up until he unfortunately was assassinated. And then I was so captivated by that story that I started getting deeper and deeper. And through that, I fell even more in love with the US, what it stands for on the world stage, the people, the culture, the diversity. And that became a drive for me. And I would think to myself, I want to finish school regardless of the challenges so I can get a job, save money, get a plane ticket, and get to visit the United States one day. And that would have become the, the longest sustained goal in my life. So, um, long story short, I would leave the village when I finished high school. We went to um, middle, no, middle school. Then we went to high school for 3 years in a different city in the country. And I went from my village where I thought things were difficult to this place where things were even more difficult, because back in the village, you can share food with your friends, your parents will make food. So at least there was something to eat every day. But now that we moved away to a completely different area of the country, sometimes it would take months to be able to get food. And during those times, on our best days, my sister and I, we would have during some weeks, we'll have 3 meals in a week. We would live on mango ratios. We would go around farms looking for any crops we can find and get. So things were difficult, but I was always focused on, I will get this done so that I can be able to afford a trip to the US one day. Um, yeah. So I know I'm all over the place, but I'm just flooded right now with memories, emotions, and a lot of things every single time I talk about it. But those years also brought opportunities that were just like blessings in disguise. I read this book titled Power Through Constructive Thinking by Dr. Emmett Fox. And that book opened my mind to the power of our thoughts and how we can deliberately sit in a place where we can use our thoughts as a tool, not just something that runs nonstop by default on autopilot. So getting to be initiated to that aspect of utilizing our thoughts has been a key tool in my toolbox growing up as a young man. And I ended up amidst all the things we've been through, getting a civil engineering degree, starting a civil engineering company that I ran for 9 years before the opportunity came. And my wife and I, we took a chance and applied for the diversity visa program, and we were accepted. And then after that, the rest is history. We moved to the US we got here on 27 September 2016, 27 September 2016. We landed in El Paso, Texas. That's why when I introduce myself to people, I would say, hi, my name is Kofi Douhadji. I'm from Texas. Don't let my accent fool you. But yeah, we landed in El Paso, Texas shortly after I started a landscaping company. And 4 months in, I decided I would serve my country, joining the Air Force. So that's how we got here. So the Air Force brought me to Nebraska. Not my love for corn.
Well, I understand from your book that as a young boy, you did see your first airplane flying overhead and was curious as to what that was and needed a description from your father to explain not only what an airplane was, but that you were too poor to ever fly on one.
Correct. Yes, that was one of the. I don't even know why I didn't share that story today because usually I start with that.
Oh.
But that was one of the key moments. And to this day, I tell my dad, that's the best thing you ever told me because
Yeah.
we were so remote that we almost never, I didn't see an airplane until I was 7 years old. So when I saw it the first time zooming over the village, I was like, there's no way. I know that's not, someone needs to explain this to me. What is that? And I was just so instantly connected. I felt like I need to be all about that thing zooming by. And my dad explained it to me how it took people from point A to point B, a little bit of science behind it because my dad is a nurse, so he's been to school enough to understand a lot of things that he would explain to me. And then after that, I then said, and when we're talking about a nurse in a village of about 200 people,
Yeah.
sometimes you get paid with corn when you heal someone,
Yeah.
when you take care of someone. So um, he said, and he explained it to me, and I asked him, when can we get on an airplane? And then he giggled and said, that's not for us. That's not just not for people like us. And I'll be like, I asked him, what do you mean by us? And he said, we can hardly afford food. But back then, I didn't know. I thought that's how everybody else lived. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't know we were. I would go to school. I would see people with stuff that I never had, but I didn't really make much of it. I would just ask myself, why? Why don't we have those things? So he explained it to me that we didn't have the financial means to ever do anything like that. In fact, no one in our family ever got close to those things, so forget about it. And that was a blessing
Yeah.
because that forget about it became like an obsession. Like, why not me? Why forget about it when I know the thing is out there and other people can experience it? So why would I forget about it?
Yeah.
And then that was the reason why I wanted to one day get on an airplane, fly to visit a country I fell in love with. So, one of my deepest goals now is to, whenever my dad is able to visit the US, I now have a private pilot license. I'm going to take him flying. I'm going to fake that we are going to crash.
This is a
So
dream of
that's
yours to
one of my
crash a
biggest
plane,
goals.
huh? Okay, so you've talked
So
about
yeah, the
motivation.
fact that he
Oh, you've talked
yeah, the
about it.
fact that he told me
Oh,
to forget about it was a blessing.
yeah. So that was a motivator for you. The
It
JFK
was.
documentary was a motivator for you.
Yes.
So it's one thing to talk about motivation. It's another to talk about optimism. And what was it? Because it certainly didn't seem to be in your environment. What do you think made you so optimistic about life? And was it
Hmm.
just something you were born with? Do you sense that you've always been optimistic?
I would think so, but I think I have also deliberately fed it over time. I've learned to grow my optimism to a size that makes it hard for when the weather gets dry for it to shrink to the point that I can no longer use it.
Yeah.
So I think that's also one of the motivations for me to spread optimism. I sometimes call myself a self-proclaimed optimism dealer because I believe we can all grow. It's just like a plant. If you can learn from someone who has a healthy um, coconut tree, how they take care of it, then you should be able to replicate that with your own coconut tree. And I think that's the same for optimism as well. But in the beginnings, I I have no idea how it just was part of me. And I like to believe that is part of all of us. But sometimes, just like anything, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the times in your life when you have had to deal with food scarcity. I mean, that was pretty constant as you were growing up.
It
And
was.
many people, I guess, use that. In fact, your father did. You referred to this in your book as the reason for not being able to do anything beyond subsistence level thinking and and just surviving to get by. And I've heard people say, I don't have time for spirituality because I need all my time just to survive.
Mm.
And it seems to me that they've got that backwards. So what do you think about that?
100%. I could not agree more, Bob, with you when you said they got it backward. Because when you understand how, you know, focusing on the fruits doesn't heal the roots,
Mm-hmm.
but the roots takes the nutrients and everything from the ground up and nourish the fruits. So when we focus on I don't have time for spirituality, it's like we're ignoring feeding the roots that is going to be the ultimate producer of the fruits. And we forget about the root, we forget about taking care of where that fruit is taking its existence from. And then we just go and live up the tree fighting,
Yeah.
but we never succeed because we don't feed the roots. So I could not agree more with you. And I think one of my biggest blessings is having the, I don't know, I understood that part of humanity that if I can focus during those times when I didn't have food, I didn't worry too much. It was difficult, but deep down, I just knew that if I could take care of my personal growth, if I could connect with God, with the universe, and I can understand where I was preventing my roots from getting the nutrients, then eventually the fruits will grow. So I think sometimes we struggle through life because we try to solve a problem with we try to solve a problem with superficial solutions while the actual root of the problem is elsewhere. It reminds me of this story, Bob, uh, where someone was looking for something outside in the dark in the street, and then at one point one friend came and joined them and started looking for the object they dropped with them. And eventually there's a public light in the street. So eventually the friend stopped and asked the person who was looking for the object, it's like, tell me, Barb, where exactly did you drop the object? And Barb said, no, I dropped it in my room. So the friend was like, why are we looking for it here? She's like, no, it's brighter here. We have a light here. I can look it for, it's better to look for it here because we can see. And this is funny, makes no sense, but we behave a lot like that. Things that are lost within, that we can find within, we go look for them outside ourselves. And I think that's where we get it wrong. That's how spirituality is the foundation. That's where you turn to if you want to fix anything outside. That's where you find it.
Yeah. That's a beautiful story. Nice analogy. So I'm curious about your language education, because I know English isn't your first language.
I'm still
So
learning, as you can tell.
would you say French is your first language?
Correct. French is my first language, and the circumstances for it becoming my first language was very unlikely. So during the 80s, I was born in 86. So during the 80s, the then president of Togo, for some reasons, decided no more local language, French or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And we would be punished if we try to speak our native tongue. If you go to school and you try to speak anything but French, you get punished and you get humiliated. So over time, you grow up in a country that didn't speak French as a French speaker. And then later on, all that went away, and then we were able to go back and learn our our mother tongues. But that's how French was and is my first language.
Yeah. Yeah, I spent a few months in Rwanda, and I found that to be the case there too, that they just suddenly dictated that French would be taught in all the schools, that all the teachers had to learn French well enough to be able to speak it and teach in that language, and the population was supposed to speak French. Then after the genocide...
It stems from, colonization and France's presence in Africa in general.
Yeah.
But why our own languages were forbidden is one of the mystery. I don't know, because France was present in Africa, but it wasn't really the reason why we should just forbidden our own languages and go with French.
Right.
But the decisions that the leaders of our countries made then just didn't make sense to a lot of people.
Right. In Rwanda, then during the genocide, the French were seen as being complicit in the genocide. So after the genocide, the government said, okay, now the official language is English. All the teachers have to throw out French, learn English quickly, and be able to teach all of their subjects in English, and everyone will learn English. And it is interesting how the government can just decide, okay, this is our language now. That was our language then. Right, it's gone.
Right. Right.
But one of the, I think, important lessons for me in being in Rwanda and looking around and seeing what I saw as a lot of poverty were that these people who I saw as lacking so much were very happy and joyous.
Oh, yes.
And,
Yes.
you know, it speaks to the ability of humanity to find joy in the smallest things, that creation is about happiness and joy, and it's there to experience. So,
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
I guess as I read your book, I read it from that point of view of having been to Africa and experienced some of the things that you were discussing. It was a different
So
country.
you could relate. Yeah.
Yes, yes, very much so. Uh,
That's wonderful.
so, what was the process that you used to learn English then?
Well, music. Music was a big tool in my box when I learned English, basic. But when we moved to the US, I thought I knew some English until we landed at the airport.
Yeah,
And I couldn't even give my name when they asked me what my name was at the custom and immigration. Because not only the accent, but also my English was super, super basic. I could say my name is, I could say good morning and basic stuff like that. But I've always been interested in culture, in people, connecting with people. So that gives me drive to learn with more dedication than most people I've spent time with. And the key to my English being where my English is today after 8 years in the US, two things. The first one, I uncovered the fact that we think more than we speak.
mm,
So, one exercise I would do is to interact with my environment internally in English. And when I stumbled upon something, a word, an object, a concept, a principle that I cannot live within in English, then I'll go to Google Translate, I'll get a dictionary, and that allowed me to learn faster than I would have if I was waiting for someone to interact with before I can utilize the language. And then I joined the Air Force.
yeah,
And you joined the Air Force, you are among people from across the US. And so far, we've lived in 5 different states. If you tell someone, bless your heart in Washington State, that doesn't mean the same thing in the South, in Texas.
right.
Right? So you start learning very fast. And especially if you're deliberately intentional about, I'm here to learn. So when people talk, you're paying attention to the nuances. You're paying attention to how, people in the South would use one word, and people in the center of the United States and people in the far West will use the same word, but they will not necessarily mean the same thing.
Yeah,
And paying attention to those and writing, journaling. I do a lot of journaling. I do a lot of reflection, and I write a lot. When I was writing Unbroken Optimist, my English was very basic. But the fact that writing gives you time and space to take a single sentence and think to yourself, what is my intent with this sentence? What do I want to communicate through this sentence? And even when you're not a master at a language, but you understand the reason why you're writing something, then you can find the words, which is not the same when you're having a conversation live with someone,
right.
because then you don't have the time and space to think through. I remember the introduction to Unbroken Optimist took me about 7 months.
Uh-huh.
But then everything else was just like that because I would go back. I'm like, no, uh, discover and unveil don't mean the same thing. You may use them and interchangeably, but if you really want to talk about something that uh, has been discovered, it's more on a physical space than unveil. And then that's how my brain would go. And then I'll find, according to my brain, the right word. And then I'll use that word instead of another word. And by the time you write a almost 200 pages book, you tend to now learn a lot of words, and you start, you have a plethora of words that you didn't know before. And then you start writing a second book and you're like, oh, instead of saying never ending, I would just say endless, because Stephen King said, um, don't waste words. If you are paying for the words you're using to write your book, you wouldn't be careless with the word. You will be very, very selective and choosy with the word you use. So instead of saying never ending, you can just say endless. And that's it. The single word says the same thing. So I've learned, I've utilized this book. The title is the I can't remember. It's a really good workbook written way back in the 1800s. So those tools helped me a lot with English. And one thing that I'm still exploring myself is that over time, I have noticed that when I do my thinking, critical thinking, when I'm trying to understand something, English tends to do me a lot more favor than my own first language and other languages that I learned before English. And it's just, it works great for me on so many levels.
So how about dreaming?
The Art of Style. The Art of Style is the book I was looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
What language do you dream in?
Such a great question, Bob. It depends on the dream. So I figured that some experiences, I've never flown an airplane when I was back in Togo.
Right.
I got introduced to that experience here in the US. So strangely, every dream that I have that has airplane flying involved is happening in English. But everything else that I've experienced, here as well as when I was growing up, would happen in French. And most of the dreams that involved my siblings and my mom will happen in Ewe. So, yeah, it's quite interesting. Most of the things that I've never experienced outside of the US, usually when I do dream about them, it's happening in English. Even when I see myself home having this experience, no environment factor that is tied to the US, the dream will still happen in English.
Okay. So you're currently living in Nebraska.
Yeah, we live in a beautiful town called Papillion.
My understanding of Nebraska, and I have to say it's very superficial, is that it's very white, and that you would stand out physically in a town in Nebraska. So, have you experienced racial prejudice as you go through your normal daily experiences?
I have not. I have not. And my experience of Nebraska is actually different. We lived in Spokane, which is actually pretty white.
Uh-huh.
Where we bought our first house in Spokane, we were the only Black family on the block,
Right.
in our neighborhood. But here in Nebraska, you would go to Walmart and hear someone behind the shelves speaking Togolese local dialects.
Oh my. Okay.
Yes. So there is a huge population of African immigrants in Nebraska, specifically Omaha. So yeah, it's completely different than what you would experience when you go to some other cities in Nebraska. But
Yeah.
where we live is filled with, it's a melting pot. Yeah, it's a melting pot. But again, even when I think to the deep west, living in San Angelo, Texas, so I have this perspective, Bob, when it comes to racial prejudice. Um, I think, in my opinion, in the U.S., we tend to stick the race tag to almost anything, even when those things can just be explained by the human condition. What do I mean by that? If you go to Togo in 2020, same people, same skin color, same dialect, everything same. Something happened at the light, a traffic stop. A cop pulled a gun and shot the man dead right there and then. You never heard about this because they all look the same. So
Right.
we are going to use words like mean, evil, this and that, and you will never hear racist, right? But in the US, in my view, when things can be labeled mean, we quickly call it racist. I'm not saying there's no racism in the US. There is racism in the US. But most of the time, when people are just being human beings with our flaws and all that we have, limitations in the US specifically, when something should be said mean, it would be said racist instead of being said, this is some ignorant person. It would
Yeah.
be, he's racist. Personally, I have not. I've been in the US close to 9 years now. People have been mean to me, Bob. People have been ignorant around me, and I've been mean to people too sometimes. I'm no saint either, but I haven't been discriminated against specifically because of my skin color. People of same skin color have been mean to me. People of different skin colors have been mean to me. And I think I have been to some of them too, nilly willy. But at the end of the day, I prefer using the human condition labels before I go to the race card.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have not. People have been mean to me. No one have been racist to me.
That's an interesting take on all that. I wanted to get back to your name because you point out
Okay.
that your name has specific meaning related to the day of your birth. So
It
what's
does.
that all about?
So in my culture, the Ewe culture, we are named based on the day of the week you are born. So Monday through Sunday, we have 7 names that we shuffle through. Uh, Friday is Kofi for boys and Afi for girls. So if I was a girl, I would have been named Afi, A-F-I, not Kofi. And every single day of the week has its own name. Monday would be Kojo. So when you hear the name of a child in Togo, you know immediately what day of the week they were born. So I was really surprised that when I would have conversation with people in the US, people wouldn't know what specific day. They might tell
Right.
you I was born on May 16th, but they don't know what day of the week May
Yeah.
16th of their year of birth was. And that was astonishing to me because I'm like, why wouldn't you? You must know it. There's no way you cannot know the day of the week you're born. And then I realized that, my culture focuses on that, but not other cultures. So yeah, we have names for every single day of the week, and we have for both genders. And if there's another Kofi in my family, they will add VI to Kofi. So something like Kofi V, which means little Kofi, because we already have one Kofi who is older. So that's how naming goes in my culture.
Yeah, I wondered because it sounds like there are only 14 names in your whole culture then.
Yeah, and then people just create some variations of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's also why we make heavy use of nicknames. So people would have nicknames that have nothing to do with their actual name, but they will just be called that. And then on paper, they'll have a different name.
Yeah, I was recently introduced online to an African comedian, and his name is Learn More. He's from Zimbabwe, and he said that in his culture, whatever name you're given sets your trajectory for the rest of your life. So since he was named Learn More, he is always focused on learning more and more and more and learning as much as he can. But if his name was Butterfly, then he would focus on butterflies all his life. And it would be easy for a comedian to make up a lot of jokes about, his country and their naming conventions. But that naming convention reminded me that your culture had a naming convention that to us was very unusual.
Yes.
Okay, believe it or not, we're getting close to the end here time-wise. So I did want to give you an opportunity to talk about your other books. So could you briefly talk about how that came about, why you decided it was time for another book and then another book?
Yeah, Tiny Sparks actually is also an old project that I was working on parallel with Unbroken Optimist, but Unbroken Optimist happened to have been the first one that was fully ready to be released. So I kept working on Tiny Sparks. Tiny Sparks is a very unique concept, right? The book comes with this deck of cards. Because I've heard many people say, "Well, Kofi, I'm not a reader. I don't have time." So you can tell me you can read from one card, right? So I took some of the key concept and quotes from the book and built this deck of cards. And Tiny Sparks is a collection of insight I've had. I'm an ultra distance runner. So specifically, when I go on the longest runs I've done, when you're just you facing nature and just putting one step after another, I just like to think as though the universe has a data bank somewhere. We don't create knowledge, we don't create wisdom, but we can have access to it when we align with it. So during those moments when I do get some flash and I'm blessed to get access to a portion of that data, I make sure I voice note, I write it down, and then all of that came together. I've ran in France, I've ran in Qatar, I've ran in Portugal, I've ran in Spain, I've ran along the beach in my home country of Togo, I've ran in multiple states in the US, also had a really beautiful run from Wall Street Center to uh, I mean Times Square to where Wall Street Center the towers used to be, and every single one of those runs were deliberate. Sometimes I do get insights. Sometimes it will just be a fun run. And then over the years, I collect all these, and that became tiny sparks. And then Roots and Fruits, I was invited to speak at an event, and our conversation during that event led to Roots and Fruits. Roots and Fruits is a very short read that inspires. Um, I pretty much learn from trees to pass a message of embracing our uniqueness. For example, a papaya has no opinion, but not everybody likes it. So think about you as an opinionated being. Expecting everybody to like you is just not realistic. It's not something to expect. And also the fact that a tree doesn't eat its own fruits. So when you think about that, what is your gift to the world? It might not taste good to yourself, but we don't care. I don't care what a mango tree thinks about the mango. I love mango. I want it. Right? Yeah. So if a tree doesn't eat its own fruits, how can we learn from that? How can we give of our talents to the world even when we doubt our own value, the value of that talent? So embrace it and just give it out, because the value it represents for other people, the tree can decide, because you can't say my fruit is sour or sweet, but other people can tell you if your fruit is sour or sweet.
Yeah.
But the only way they can tell you that is when you give them the opportunity to have a try at your fruits. So those lessons are what I share in Roots and Fruits. And currently I'm trying my hand at my first fiction work. It's called The Last Airman. And I'm pretty excited about that one because I'm taking it wild, just going wild with it.
Yeah, from what you told me, it sounds very dystopian.
Yeah, we're talking about a post-war between the U.S. and China. Yeah. And yeah, surprisingly, China won the war and took over the U.S. and we were forced in the U.S. to speak Mandarin. Ew, right? but it's just a dystopian world. The way we communicate, the way we travel, everything has changed. AI is heavily involved. But to me, this is an opportunity for me to send like a wake-up call for us to not get complacent and think we are the best. We might be the best, but if we sit on that title, we might just lose it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. At this point, well, first of all, I want to let people know that if they want to connect with you, I'll have your contact information and your website link at yourspiritualjourneypodcast.com. What is the best way for people to contact you?
The best way for people to contact me would be through LinkedIn or TikTok.
Okay.
Kofi Douhadji. Yes, I'm very active on social media. Kofi Douhadji. You send me a DM on both platforms. You bet I'll get back to you in hours.
Okay.
So at Kofi Douhadji on both platforms, and I usually will get back to you within hours if you reach out to me.
All right. Any last words for this audience? I always give the guest an opportunity to leave the audience with a few words of wisdom. You've got a lot of them. You could always just read them off your cards, but this is your opportunity to say a few words to this particular audience.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Bob. If you're able to hear my voice, I want you to take this as a sign for you to dream big and be bold. I like to think to myself, if death is the destination and the only certainty in life, why be shy on your way to the grave? Don't be shy. Enjoy life, share love, and be exactly what you see within your heart because God placed it there. Okay. He will help you.
Those are great words. So, audience, as always, take what you've heard and whatever resonates with you, incorporate it into your life. Put the rest on the shelf until you're ready to deal with it. And until next time, this has been your spiritual journey.